I'd always been fascinated by the supernatural, drawn to the thrill of things that go bump in the night. So when I got a job as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, known for its eerie reputation, I couldn't resist the temptation to uncover the mysteries that lay within its walls. Little did I know that my curiosity would lead me down a terrifying path. It all began on a cold winter's night. The hospital was quiet, with only a few patients in critical condition. As I made my rounds, there was an unmistakable chill in the air that sent shivers down my spine. I brushed it off as a figment of my imagination, trying to focus on my work. But the unease grew with each passing hour. During my night shift, strange occurrences became a regularity. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways, despite there being no one in sight. Lights flickered ominously, creating an eerie ambience that made my heart race. But the most unsettling of all was the feeling of being watched. On one fateful night, while tending to a patient in room 213, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing behind me, their presence sending chills down my spine. I turned around, expecting to see a colleague, but the room was empty. I swallowed my fear and continued my duties, though the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. As the weeks went by, the hospital's eerie reputation began to make sense. Whispers of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena circulated amongst the staff, but no one dared to speak openly about it. Each employee carried their own secrets, fearing that acknowledging the presence of the supernatural would only invite further chaos. One particularly dreaded night, I found myself working the graveyard shift alone. The hospital seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy. Shadows danced along the walls, and the sound of whispering voices filled the air. I mustered all the courage I had and pressed on, refusing to let fear overpower me. But then, in the darkest corner of the hospital's basement, I saw it. A figure, hunched and twisted, slowly emerged from the shadows. Its eyes were hollow and its skin pale and withered. Dread washed over me as I realized I was face to face with a ghostly apparition. The air turned icy cold, and my breath came out in shallow gasps. I instinctively tried to flee, but the ghostly figure reached out, its bony hands grasping at the air. Panic consumed me as I stumbled backwards, desperately searching for an escape. With each step, the ghostly presence drew closer, its haunting cries filling my ears. It was as though the hospital itself had come alive, seeking to claim my soul. I sprinted towards the hospital's exit, heart pounding in my chest. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I fought to stay one step ahead of the vengeful entity. Finally, I burst through the doors and into the safety of the night, gasping for breath and covered in a cold sweat. Though I left St. Mary's Hospital that night, I couldn't escape the nightmares that haunted my sleep. The images of the ghostly figure and the chilling presence lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the horrors that lay within those walls. To this day, I continue to wonder about the dark secrets that reside within the hospital's walls. Was it a place cursed by past tragedies, or was it simply a product of an overactive imagination? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is for certain. The haunting at St. Mary's Hospital will forever be etched in my memory. Working in a hospital was both rewarding and taxing, especially during the night shift. The dimly lit corridors and hushed whispers of nurses and doctors. As a nurse, I had seen my fair share of pain and suffering, but nothing could have prepared me for the chilling experience that unfolded during one fateful night. It was a quiet evening, and the usual hustle and bustle of the day had subsided. I was tending to my patients, making rounds to check on their conditions. The air felt heavy with weariness, both from the patients and the staff. Around midnight, I received a call from the psychiatric unit. A patient had become agitated, and they needed assistance calming him down. I made my way to the unit, my footsteps echoing in the dimly lit hallway. As I entered the unit, I felt an inexplicable sense of dread. The patient, Mr. Thompson, was known to have episodes of extreme anxiety, but tonight it seemed different. His eyes darted around the room, and he muttered unintelligible words under his breath. I tried to soothe him, speaking in gentle tones, but his agitation only seemed to worsen. Suddenly he turned to me with wild eyes and said, "They're here." My heart skipped a beat as if his words had pierced my soul. I glanced around the room, seeing nothing but empty chairs and medical equipment. Trying to reassure Mr. Thompson, I said, "There's no one here. You're safe." But he shook his head vigorously. "They watch us and they wait." His words sent a chill down my spine, and I couldn't help but wonder if his mind was playing tricks on him, or if there was something more to his fear. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak and groan of the old hospital building sent shivers down my spine. Each time I passed a darkened corridor, I felt an unsettling presence, as if unseen eyes followed my every move. During my break, I decided to visit the hospital's archives to ease my mind. I hoped that learning more about the hospital's history would rationalize my growing unease. However, what I uncovered only intensified my fears. Decades ago, the hospital had been a place of great suffering and tragedy. Stories of unexplained deaths and mistreatment of patients filled the archives. One particularly haunting tale spoke of a nurse who had worked the night shift, only to vanish without a trace. The nurse's disappearance had remained unsolved, and some speculated that her spirit still wandered the hospital, seeking justice or peace. The chilling details matched Mr. Thompson's claims, and I couldn't help but wonder if his agitation had been sparked by a ghostly encounter. As the night wore on, I felt a growing sense of unease. Distant whispers echoed through the empty hallways. I wanted to dismiss it all as mere imagination, but the fear gnawed at me. During one of my rounds, I passed an old storage room tucked away in a secluded corner of the hospital. As I walked by, I heard a faint, rustling sound coming from within. My heart pounded, and I hesitated before gathering the courage to investigate. The door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black room. I turned on my flashlight and peered inside, only to catch a glimpse of a pale, ethereal figure standing in the corner. My breath caught in my throat, and my hands trembled as I tried to comprehend what I was seeing. The figure seemed to fade away before my eyes, leaving behind an unsettling energy that lingered in the room. Fear took hold of me, and I quickly shut the door, deciding to avoid that area for the rest of the night. As morning approached, and the first rays of sunlight pierced through the darkness, the haunting feelings began to dissipate. The hospital gradually filled with bustling staff and patients, the eerie atmosphere fading with the night. I never shared my experience with anyone, fearing they would dismiss it as the result of exhaustion or stress. But deep down, I knew what I had witnessed was real, a glimpse into the unknown, where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and the shadows of the night shift held secrets that only the brave and the unfortunate could uncover. I used to work the night shift at a hospital, and let me tell you, hospitals at night can be scary places. Most of the patients were asleep, but the sound of machines and the occasional groan of a patient could be heard throughout the halls. It was a long shift, and I had my fair share of eerie experiences, but nothing compared to the night I met Lena. Lena was a new patient who had been admitted after a car accident. She had multiple injuries, and it was clear that the experience had traumatized her. She couldn't sleep and kept seeing and hearing things that weren't there. As a nurse, it was my job to calm her down, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the night went on, things got stranger. I heard a noise in the linen room and felt a hand on my shoulder, only to turn around and see no one there. Later on, I saw a man dressed in black smiling at me through the glass window of a door, but when I ran out to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. It was when Lena started describing the same man in black, smiling at her and speaking to her, that I knew something was wrong. Her screams woke me up, and I realized that the man in black was not just a hallucination or a figment of my imagination. He was real, and he was coming. I don't know how we managed to escape, but we did. I was with another nurse, Francesca, and together we ran through the hospital and climbed out of a broken window in the basement. We made it to my car and drove away as fast as we could. We stopped at a Wendy's to catch our breath and calm down, and that's where Francesca and I formed an instant bond. The experience traumatized me, and I quit my job the next day. I never went back to the hospital, and I never wanted to see the man in black again. Looking back, I'm not sure what happened that night, but I know it was something supernatural. Hospitals can be haunted places, and I learned that the hard way. Even now, years later, I still get chills thinking about that night. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't escaped or if the man in black had caught up to us. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget the horrors of that haunted hospital. During my tenure as a nurse at a small community hospital, I encountered a patient who left a profound impact on my life. For the purpose of this story, let's call him Mr. Roberts, a kind-hearted man in his early 70s who had been admitted for severe respiratory issues. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, his condition continued to deteriorate rapidly. As his nurse, I formed a close bond with Mr. Roberts and his family during his stay. I admired his resilience and unwavering optimism, even in the face of adversity. Our daily interactions revolved around conversations about his life, family, and cherished memories. One evening, as I was administering his medication, he gripped my hand tightly and said, "Thank you, dear." His words touched me deeply, and I reassured him that we were doing everything we could to help him recover. However, his condition worsened, and it became evident that he may not have much time left. A few days later, Mr. Roberts peacefully passed away, surrounded by his loved ones. The news of his passing saddened the entire hospital staff, as he had touched many lives with his kindness and courage. In the weeks that followed, I experienced a series of inexplicable occurrences that shook me to my core. One night, as I was preparing the medication cart, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. I turned around to find the room filled with an ethereal mist, and for a brief moment, I could have sworn I saw Mr. Roberts' face staring back at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. Over the following days, I continued to feel his presence in subtle ways. I would catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of a patient's bed, only for it to vanish when I looked again. Lights flickered and objects moved ever so slightly, as if someone was trying to communicate from beyond. I confided in a fellow nurse who was open-minded and supportive. She suggested that I might be experiencing grief-related hallucinations, given the emotional toll of losing a patient I'd grown close to. Despite her explanation, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Roberts' spirit was reaching out to me. One night, as I was reviewing patients' charts at the nurse's station, I heard a faint whisper behind me. Turning around, I saw an empty hallway, but the feeling of someone's presence lingered. The hair on my neck stood on end, and a chill ran down my spine. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to come to terms with these haunting experiences. However, the most surreal moment occurred during a particularly difficult shift when we were understaffed. Overwhelmed with the workload, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Suddenly, a warm, comforting presence enveloped me. In that moment, I felt a reassuring hand on my shoulder, as if someone was telling me not to give up. The feeling of support and encouragement was so palpable that I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. From that day on, the eerie encounters gradually diminished, but the connection with Mr. Roberts persisted in my heart. I cherished the belief that his spirit had reached out to comfort and encourage me during those difficult days. While some may dismiss my experiences as mere imagination or the manifestation of grief, I believe that the boundaries between the living and the deceased are not as clear, cut as we may think. Mr. Roberts' spirit, or whatever it may have been, may have found a way to transcend the physical realm, to provide comfort to someone who had cared for him during his final moments. His presence, though intangible, had a lasting impact on my perspective as a nurse. It taught me to embrace empathy and compassion beyond the boundaries of life, knowing that the bonds we form with our patients can endure even in the realm of the unexplained. And so I continue to honor Mr. Roberts' memory, cherishing the unique connection we shared, a testament to the enduring power of human connection, both in life and beyond.